Joe, Gage, Max, and Joe. Gage, Max, Joe, Gage, Max, and Joe. YouTube live show with Gage, Max, and Joe. Never fired up and ready to go. Gage, Max, and Joe. Gage, Max, Joe, Gage, Max, and Joe. Gage, Max, Joe, Gage, Max, and Joe. YouTube live show with Gage, Max, and Joe. Never fired up and ready to go. Gage, Max, and Joe.
Alrighty, guys, we're back here. Joe, how we doing?
Doing great to be with you boys.
Max, how we doing, man?
Doing great. Ready to talk a little bit with you guys. Ready to just, speak my mind,
You still got your chain on at all or no?
Yeah.
Let's see
my
it.
uncle. No. We'll see it in due time.
What's the weather like in Chicago right now?
Pretty hot, honestly. Yeah. It was my brother's birthday yesterday, and we were just trying to enjoy a little bit of patio, hanging out, and it was just so muggy and miserable. But yeah, great party. Loved it.
Okay, so for this podcast, we're going to do things a little differently. Usually we bring on volleyball players or coaches or whatnot, but we decided to kind of go outside that realm. And this still relates to volleyball. It still relates to sports, but we kind of wanted to go into different aspects of the game because non-volleyball players can have a huge impact and a very influential say on leadership or any other kind of aspects of the game. So we're going to bring on ex-Colonel Trey Johnson, 27 years of service.
Retired Colonel.
Retired Colonel.
Retired Colonel, yeah.
27 years of service, member of Special Forces, Green Beret, currently member of the National Guard, just a total badass in general. He does teach at the University of Hawaii. He teaches a leadership class only for student athletes, am I right?
Not and ROTC members as well. And so I'm pretty sure it might be open to all students, but primarily you see student athletes and ROTC members take that.
And Joe's repping a shirt right now.
Yes.
Everyone gets that shirt, yeah?
Everyone in my class got this shirt. Max took the class and didn't get the shirt.
We didn't get the shirts. We were done with the shirts phase, but yeah.
Well, I have not taken that class. I plan on taking this class. This is a very, very good segue into this, I guess. So we'll be having him on later. And again, we're going to want to stand by. You're going to want to kind of hear what he has to talk about because he has a lot of experience dealing with teams and whatnot. But it should be a very, very interesting conversation. So let's get on to our next segment of Keeping It Real. So keeping it real, we're going to talk about a little bit about our bodies, about the health, physical health of things. Mental health will be another subject, but I think Joe's going to take it away with a keeping it real today.
Yeah, and to be honest, Gage, mental health always plays into the physical health. I think it all ties in. I don't think you can really separate those two things out. I'm not certified to speak totally on that, but in my opinion, that's what I feel is the truth. And so for me, as an athlete, from when I was about a sophomore, junior in high school, I always had issues with durability, I felt like.
Right.
And
It's still today though too.
no, I mean, I've gotten much better at knowing what my body needs and how I can keep my body in shape to be able to stay out on the floor for a longer time, because I said this a lot, when you get to college and you're in the collegiate system and you're lifting every single day and you are on all these programs and you can talk to nutritionists, that helps you out so much. And for me, it's like the stretching part of it and the weightlifting part of it is something I had to really dive deep into and kind of learn more about, because for me, going out there and getting reps was always really easy for me. The preparation, the video part was always really easy for me. And, the nutrition part of it was huge. I think that some athletes don't learn that till they're later on in their professional careers. And for me, I noticed the next day, my body feels if I wasn't eating that great the day before, or and it 100% plays into how I perform and how I feel and how my body feels the next day. And I can't speak on these two behalves. I think everybody's bodies react differently, but from a nutrition aspect, I know that I originally, when I was trying to get in like the best shape after my sophomore year at Hawaii, I was just worried about cutting weight, just cut. And, I really never considered like, oh, maybe it's okay to put on muscle, and so okay to put on weight that's muscle. Like I didn't know enough to be able to sit there and plan out my my diet or what I was going to be eating on a daily basis. And I was just kind of like, oh, I just can't be eating this, can't be eating, and I really didn't know a whole lot. And so it took a little bit for me to go research stuff, and I had to ask people. And once I did that, like I kind of understood, and I really got a good understanding of what my body needs to be fueled to perform at the highest
For sure.
I possibly can.
I think as libero, I get away with a lot more. You know, I'm not jumping as much. I recently just tried to start jumping and whatnot. And I used to be I was always a libero playing outside hitter, not the other way around. My last 2 years I had to hit, and I don't know. I always I definitely can't jump like I used to. I can't get off the ground. I'm a lot slower. And as libero, I get away with a lot more stuff because the Libero diet and all that. I mean, Max. You went from. First of all, you kind of when you went into Hawaii. It wasn't the best meeting with Milos. What was the first thing he said to you when you walked into his office?
Oh yeah, no, a little bit of tough love from Milan. He was like, "Yeah, you're too fat. If you're trying to play here, you're for sure gonna lose weight." But I was like, "All right, nice to meet you." But no, I think just touching on the Libero diet thing that you're talking about before, I think that, that's not for everyone either. Like you look at Dustin Watson, like that dude's eating just these plant-based fruit bowls that just look absolutely fire every day. You know what I mean? So I think everyone's different. They got different stuff that works for them and fuels them. So
For sure. And you hear so many different sides. And for me, it's always, I never like when people start judging about their lifestyle. And if other people aren't living the same lifestyle, I don't like, and I appreciate people who live it and they'll teach you about how they're living it, but they don't expect you to kind of be fully embodied. I think that's important. Everybody's so different. And depending on your workout regimen, depending on your own body, like it's so different on what you need. And that's why for like I was saying, for me, it's like me just coming up with thinking about that I knew what I needed to get myself into shape coming into my junior year at UH was almost ignorant to a part. It's like and once I did get that help and I did ask people that actually knew what they were talking about, that helped a lot, and actually it made it easier to do the thing, to do what I wanted to do and get myself in the right kind of mindset and the frame that I wanted to be.
That's true, but there have been multiple occasions. So you are pretty lenient about, let's say if I want to eat something, but there are times when you feast me and
for
stuff.
sure. Well, that's when you're just going on a bender and you're just eating all kinds.
You're judging me though.
No, what I mean like back to back days where you're just eating crap. Like okay,
when's the last time I did that? When's the last time I did that?
He's not judging you though, Gage. He's holding you accountable.
Teasing is judging.
It is for sure.
It's holding you accountable.
I guess you could reword it.
My relationship with my brother, I feel like is a little bit different, and people may disagree with this, but I like Max said, I hold my brother accountable, and I don't mind him going and eating a bunch of food if it's like good food for him. But if he's eating like fast food all the time, and he's supposed to be this high level athlete and he wants to go be a professional athlete, then I need to hold him to standards because he needs to be in the shape that when people are paying you to play and people are paying you to be in shape, like you need to kind of take that into effect.
So that brings up actually a good topic. I have a question about. So girls, if you're in a high level program, girls have nutritionists, and I don't know about guys.
Boys do too.
But it's not to the level like girls with like societal standards and whatnot. It's totally different from being skinny versus a boy being skinny. You know what I'm saying? So the thing is, what I have a question about this is nutritionists, right? I hear a lot of girls complain like my nutritionist, and it can cause a lot of problems. But at the same time, and this goes for guys too, but at the same time, does it make you a better player? I have no way. I kind of thought about this because I've never been in that situation. But okay, let's say if you're a player, right, and the nutritionist is like, you need to lose weight, and you're like stressing over it, and you lose weight, but that also makes you a better player. You know what I'm saying? Like, where do you cross the line, or where do you feel like? I feel like, I don't know, like some people are like, oh, like I feel stressed out because my coach is like this, but it was like, if it makes you a better player, then it's like, if that's your optimal weight, then can you really be
for sure?
mad?
But you need to know what your optimal weight is,
but I feel like the nutritionist need to push you to get.
It's a touchy subject for sure. We need to get someone on here about that. I think we do need to get someone on here about that. We need to get expert on here before
James Anastasiades is who we need.
Yeah, but James is never.
No, we need to get a professional in here that can.
I know. Yeah,
we would have a lot of questions for them. There's a lot of things. And, you know,
For
and
sure.
then on top of that, the strength training part of it, I think when you, that it becomes really dangerous when you don't know what you're doing and you're trying to plan and say someone's like trying to cut. So there's not eating anything almost, and they're not eating the right foods. And then you're training a ton on top of that. You become like really at risk for putting your body in a dangerous situation. So
it goes both ways because I've heard girls and guys go like anorexic because of it too. So I feel like it's a touchy subject. We're gonna try and get someone on here and talk about this. Something that's kind of been brewing in my head.
For sure,
But
someone that can actually give people advice, because we're not telling anyone what to do. We just want to be careful.
This
You know,
is just
always err on the
this is
side
kind
of
of like
caution.
this is kind of like what some stuff that we've gone through and questions we have and how we've dealt with that. For me, you see a lot nowadays. You see athletes getting into yoga. For me, that was huge. Like, I love core power yoga. Is something I found. I started getting into sculpting classes
For
2
sure,
summers
bro.
ago, and that type of stuff for the durability.
You got me
Part of
into that.
things. I know, and Gage was so reluctant last summer, and then finally, everybody's reluctant at first.
6 a.m. every morning.
So the yoga part, like even that stuff, you know, I see so many athletes from all different sports nowadays getting into that type of stuff. And when you're talking about professional athletes and elite athletes, even at the collegiate level, the top teams, there's such a small difference that separates each team.
For sure.
And within your team, athletes when you're talking about who's going on the floor, like it's such a small, minute difference. And so when you talk about stuff like yoga or what you're eating or hydration or the strength training, all of that stuff, even just like that little edge makes such a big difference when you're talking about at the highest levels. And shout out to TB12, Tom Brady's
Pajamas.
lifestyle methods. You know, I know it is kind of a business for them, but for me, like, that was something I learned a lot through his books and through his video, and kind of doing a lot of research on his lifestyle and why he's able to play at the highest level in one of the top sports leagues in the world when he's in his 40s. You know, that's super impressive, and that has to do with your body maintenance and his durability, his pliability, nutrition, his strength training, all that stuff comes into play. Avocado ice cream.
Okay. Well, I hope we learned something about kind of durability. Again, I am not the best advocate for I guess keeping your body in the best condition as possible. But
we're gonna get someone in here very soon, though, to come speak, and we want to know. Like, we want to know more.
That's a very interesting topic. But I also want to learn a little more about leadership, a little more about myself. Dive into it. So we're gonna welcome ex-colonel,
retired colonel.
No, still colonel.
He's retired.
Service member, Colonel Trey Johnson, going to be on the show here.
Alrighty, we're joined here by now Colonel Trey Johnson. Now, usually when I like to introduce guests, I like to kind of give their background, but the more I did my research, the more I realized that would probably take 30 minutes. So I would like to thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
So the first thing we'd like to talk about, as we kind of say, we had a little introduction before, is that you are the teacher of a leadership class for a lot of Hawaii athletics students, and we'd like you to kind of talk about that and how that kind of came about for you.
Yeah, basically, as a military member, I was ultimately assigned to the University of Hawaii Army ROTC department in the early 2000s timeframe, 1999 to 2002, and I established a leadership course that was targeting the general population outside the cadets that are normally in the program to become officers. This leadership course was designed to reach out to the general population to provide them fundamentals of leadership. And so I provided that course for a 3-year period from 1999 to about 2002 before I deployed to Iraq and continued my military career. And then ultimately, when I retired in 2014, I was asked to come back and teach that same course, Fundamentals of Leadership. And that course is open to all students. However, one of our objectives was to create a strong relationship on lower campus between Army ROTC and ROTC departments and athletics. As a result of that, we had a number of student athletes who are focused on developing their personal leadership skills to advance and use their opportunities to make an impact on the greater good as they move forward.
So when people ask me at UH, my favorite class I ever took, I always put your class up there as I give them usually 2 or 3, and your class always up. It was one of my favorite classes to take at UH, and I learned so much. And you can definitely tell that everybody in that class enjoyed everything that you had to say and was very interested. That was like every single day we went into class, there was something really inspiring that we were hearing about. And for you, when you look at leaders and you're working with student athletes or ROTC members or students, what do you, in terms of being a born versus just a natural leader, how are you able to see that within students or within student athletes?
That's
what
a great
traits
question.
are you looking for?
That's a great question. First of all, I like to establish the fact that being a member of the Army, we take people from all walks of life, bring them together, and form cohesive organizations to go out and do things all over the world. And so there's a concept and a process in which you go through that I took from that, and that's leadership. And I took those principles of leadership and I put them into the class, inspired by the mentors and the sacrifices I witnessed and experienced with, and I packaged them into fundamentals of leadership. And the first fundamental that we discuss and that we talk about is the fact that everybody can be a leader, as is right now. And the reason we established that is there is no copyright on leadership. Leaders, in my opinion, and in the Army's opinion and military, is that they are made, not born. Because they're made and not born, it gives every opportunity to each person to meet their maximum potential. And so if we copyright leadership by titles and other superficial things, then we impede everyone's ability and their own perception of their ability to lead, because the most powerful form of leadership is leadership by example. And so because you're a human being, you're a student, you're a member of an organization, to include a family unit, leadership by example as the most powerful form of leadership can impact others around you. And so when we establish this, then it gives some ownership to the individual, that they can start taking control of the 2 things they have accountability for, and that's their effort and their attitude. There's 2 things you can't control: your effort and your attitude. Yep. You can't control where you were born, the color of your skin, and those types of things, but you can control your effort and attitude. So understanding that leadership is a choice, it is not copyrighted, it is available to everyone. The fact that you're part of a network in the human race, you have the ability to impact others around you by your example.
For sure. And I'm going to read something here. I had something up. You'll recognize it as soon as as soon as I read it here, we're going to get into it. This. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. This is something every day in class we went over 3 to 4 times. I remember, I'm not kidding, every single day in class.
Frequently, for sure, yeah.
And I know there's several members on our team at UH who put this up in their locker. And so this is also known as Warrior Ethos. And you'll find this in just Army. I went on Army's website and boom, it was right there at the top. And can you explain to us the importance to this and how this what this gave you throughout your time serving in the military?
Well, really, the warrior ethos, and an ethos is a way of life, is a mindset, and really it establishes an approach and a decision-making cycle to live your life. By understanding these tenets, the stanzas within the warrior ethos, and breaking them down to an understanding you can apply on a daily life to affect your decisions, it really can be life-changing. And so through my experience, first with the Ranger Regiment and learning the Ranger Creed, as I continue to serve, we were introduced to the warrior ethos, which I saw as a framework in which to live my life. And I took that as a fundamental leadership into the classroom. So once we established that leadership is available to everyone, leadership by example is the most powerful form of leadership, then we gave them a framework in which to apply to put it to action. And that's what the warrior ethos is. I will always place the mission first, means that whatever you're doing that is bigger than you is the most important objective. And if you think that way, putting the organization, the greater good above yourself, then in fact, you will make decisions that lend itself to contributing to the greater good in that organization. And, never accepting defeat is something that you will not let circumstances outside of your control, unforecasted events, get in the way of achieving your goal and your contribution to the mission. And, not accepting defeat is a external mechanism or external objectives that you have to work through, whereas never quitting is an internal decision that you make that will force you to find solutions to complex problems. And never leaving a fallen comrade is really what it's all about, because you're always part of society, and whatever you're doing to impact the greater good, you're not going to leave someone behind, because that is what makes it all work. Right. And we were inspired, and I was inspired by the fallen warriors that I had served with, and I really dedicated my class to those fallen warriors and their sacrifice as inspiration, to take advantage of what they had done, use it as a source of inspiration to move forward, and had shared purpose, and challenge every student to go out and become the best version of themselves they could through application of the warrior ethos.
Right. So I think when talking about leadership, I think that a big part of that is adaptation, being able to adapt, whether it's, especially when for us it's a game, for you it's a mission, right? Or any other part of life. So I was wondering.
What you want to apply to, yeah.
Exactly. So as a leader, right? I like to think I have a big role as a leadership kind of on the volleyball court when it comes to defense. That's my job. Like, and I have to be like going up to guys, be like, hey, you got to do this, you got to do this. And I know that one guy, okay, I'm here, I got to handle him differently. Especially like, I remember in the national championship last year, I had to handle guys completely different, kind of get their attention. And I was wondering if there's ever been a time when you kind of, in a very stressful situation, strenuous situation, when you were like, hey, like, I got to kind of calm myself down, and I kind of got to go like handle stuff differently. I kind of had to adapt to his kind of learning technique, or adapt to what the mission is asking us to do. So I was wondering if you can kind of talk about experiences you had in that situation.
Yeah, I think preparation is the key to success during chaotic situations. Right. We call it VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Those are the situations you get yourself into. As a member of the Coalition Military Assistance Training Team in 2003 in Iraq, I found myself with a mission that was to recruit, train, equip, and employ the new Iraqi security forces. So that meant that we had to go out and go face-to-face with these Iraqis that were in the environment, that were not vetted, and would leave their homes to come with the coalition to turn themselves into an Iraqi security force to protect their borders. And so those battalions had to also be consisted of Kurds, Shiite, and Sunnis, 3 different ethnic groups that were at odds with each other. So to create a cohesive unit and organization that could defend its borders with 3 ethnic groups during an active insurgency was quite a complex problem. So the way we attacked it is control what we can control by effort and attitude, preparing as best possible, and then dealing with the dynamic situation as we faced it day to day. And so part of that is managing your activation level. It's a physiological self-regulation technique, just from breathing and remembering the warrior ethos and the mission, the shared purpose that we have, that gives us a physiological state to think clearer in times of stress. So when you're in a volleyball match in a national championship and you're serving, or it's a match point, the ability to understand that you're part of something big, you're prepared, trust in your training, trust in yourself, trust in your teammates, lower your activation level, and then perform what you have to perform with confidence, but also knowing that if you do your best with effort and attitude, that's all you can control.
For sure. And I think those are great points. And, people listening ask us a lot about, in those like tough situations, how do you handle it? I think that is a perfect explanation how you need to be in those situations. And, I've seen a lot of people, whether I'm coaching or I'm playing or I'm watching teams play, and you see leaders who, whether it's behind the scenes, they talk a lot, but like in that moment, they don't do the right thing or they make a mistake. What do you think, how does that have an effect on the rest of the unit or the rest of the team when the leader necessarily isn't acting how they're not kind of
Preaching.
what they're preaching, they're not doing what they're preaching, or they make a poor decision? How does that have an effect, and what's a way that you can rebound from that?
Okay. Again, I go back to a principle that really I think is fundamental, and that's really focusing on what you can control. So if you're a member of the team and the leader is not performing or not walking the walk, maybe talking the talk but not walking the walk, and you see that and it's affecting the team, the way you approach that is by demonstrating the values that we have put out. That's the Army values, the 7 Army values. And if you demonstrate those, because leadership by example is the most powerful form, even though you're not in that leadership position, you can affect those around you by your own actions and behavior that may turn the tide and actually bring on a positive effect that you're looking for. Because you can't control everyone, you can't control yourself. And I think demonstration of those values, loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage are the types of traits and characteristics that if you exhibit to those around you, it will have overwhelming synergy that may help you in that situation overcome it. Then you can get back to a situation where the team can progress, and maybe that leader will see what happened and make a change themselves.
Right.
I wanted to ask you, I wanted to segue in here and ask you about the activation level that you were mentioning earlier. Could, maybe if you could take a minute just to elaborate on that, we'd be interested to hear.
That's really, I have the opportunity to work with the Human Performance Project for the military, and it's really just some self-regulation and self-awareness techniques that help you understand others and understand yourself better, but also allow you to self-regulate by managing your breathing. That gives you the ability to process information better, control your activation, recognize your activation levels, and manage it in a way that's appropriate for that situation. So if you're in a tense situation and you recognize that you're overly activated, just through deliberate breathing and a few mental skills, you can put yourself in a better mindset to perform in that particular situation.
And I think
Very cool.
that right now is more than ever something kind of a lot of people, it's good for them to hear. Is like, because right now in like current world situation, there's so many stressful situations in different parts of the world, and especially here in the US right now, and people having to kind of like the activation process, like kind of getting themselves in the right mindset to make smart and right decisions in stressful moments is really important. And it can get you in some hot water, and it can also being able to do that also can get you out of it and making that kind of mindful and right decision.
I think it's also it's controlling yourself, but I think as a leader, right, you do by example. It has to be kind of an infectious thing where it's like, okay, he's calm, like we're all kind of calm. And I think the best leader, in those high stress situations, okay, you see him calm, you see him kind of talking to his team, like, okay, being able to kind of control, I guess for lack of a better word, the kind of the vibe of the team. And I think that's kind of key to everything.
And for you, I mean, I'm sure you've been in many, many, many different stressful situations. Is there something that sticks in your mind that you're able to tell us here, a situation that you dealt with in your 27 years of service that kind of displayed the ability to
The techniques you mentioned,
lower the activation level?
Well, I think one of the examples I was talking about in Iraq was I was working with Iraqi nationals to help create the Iraqi security forces. And to execute that mission in an active insurgency, when everything you do is being targeted by the insurgency groups to disrupt that particular function, that attempt to stand up security forces to protect the borders, everything that you do is heightened and is, life-threatening situations in many cases. And so we needed Iraqi nationals to help participate in the process and make this work. We couldn't do it ourselves. So we were the first components of going face to face with Iraqi nationals to build trust, to start the process. And I had a conversation with an Iraqi colleague during this process, and this is very early in the Iraq campaign. This is in August 2003. And we sat down and he asked me a few questions, a series of questions. He said, so obviously you're an American. And I said, yes, of course. He said, did you volunteer for the military? And I said, yes, I did. He said, did you volunteer to come here? And I said, yes, I did. And he asked me, do you have a family? And I said, yes, I do. He said, do you have a college education? I said, yes, I do. And he started to look at me, and he just had an internal revelation within himself, and we had a silent moment. And I think what happened was it helped me understand my own sense of service to the greater good, made me realize, you know, what I was doing, why I was doing it, the deep purpose of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And it also provided him an opportunity to see that commitment to share something that I thought was valuable, willing to, like my brothers and sisters that were also doing this, still are doing it today, did it before me, and inspired me to do what I did. They saw that level of sacrifice and wanting to share that with them, that provided him some inspiration when he needed it to, you know, do the things he needed to do for his own country and his own family. And so that particular moment is not life-threatening, but it was an awakening to my own personal values and what I was doing, why I was doing it. And that translated to a message to a colleague in a dire situation that helped him move forward, given shared purpose that we had there to establish the security forces to protect innocent people from threats like terrorism.
Absolutely. And, you know, those conversations and those conversations, especially between people who are kind of adverse to each other, it kind of humanizes when you're able to humanize the other side and understand and have those conversations, even when it's two people having an argument about, or they don't agree on something. And like I was saying before, in today's world, this is so big. Being able to sit there and have a conversation, understand, yeah, your viewpoints might not be the same, but understanding that everybody has a right to speak, especially here in the United States, is really important. And being able to sit there and have a conversation, I think that's so important. Being able to educate each other and have an understanding of each other's side. And that's a large part of being a leader. Being a leader, it's not about sitting there and being able to boss people around and being able to, in moments, make decisions. Like sitting there and having an understanding of everybody in your unit and making the decision based on the people that you're leading. And so having that humanization aspect of it, I think, is so huge. I mean, I might be wrong, but in every aspect of life, I feel like, and being, like I said, being able to sit there and converse and understand each other is so important. And I learned that kind of later on in my like high school careers. You know, when I was younger, I was always just like bossing around people, and like I was getting angry all the time. It's like, all right, I need to understand and have an understanding of the guys that I'm working with. They might not be that as into it as I am, and they might not be as committed as I am, and I need to understand that. They have other loves in their life and other areas that they want to focus on, so I need to understand that and be able to work with them in those aspects.
So none of us have been in a situation where kind of a life and death situation. So we talked about kind of calming your mind. So I'm sure you've kind of been in a situation where it's either life or death, and you're kind of preparing, okay, this could be my time. So I was wondering, what goes through your mind, and how do you handle a situation when there's the high possibility of death?
And you're able to make decisions on other people's lives too.
Exactly.
I think having an understanding of your overall purpose and really experiencing it with your colleagues and your teammates and your organization in that situation, you start to break it down into something that's tangible, where you need to act on what it is you're acting on, because those around you are dependent on you to do your part. And when you have a sense of responsibility, you can, and you have a conviction towards what it is you're doing, you can overwhelm and overcome your personal, your concern for your personal safety by a conviction that you have with shared purpose with your teammates, your members of your organization in a stressful situation. So then you apply some mental skills to control your activation level, trust in your training, trust in your teammates, and then you move forward with the intent that good things will happen. And that's all you can control is your effort and attitude. You cannot control the outcome. And that's why I use examples in the classroom of sacrifice, like Lieutenant Hiehle from University of Hawaii, one of the 16 fallen warriors, as an example of sacrifice and willingness to serve the greater good. I use non-military examples like Eddie Akau, who you know, as we use the slogan today, that Eddie would go, meaning that Eddie was applying the warrior ethos. He was in a chaotic situation where he saw an opportunity that he thought he could help his crew, and he made a decision based on that intent, and that's all he can control. And because of that, we're inspired by his courage to help those around him to do the right thing without knowing the outcome. And that's what we teach, is that, you know, warrior ethos means the greater good allows you to put your personal concerns aside, and ordinary people do extraordinary things because of a conviction and a shared purpose, and doing it for the person beside you, to the left and the right. And that's what comes down to a lot of times in the military, and it certainly applies in civilian life as well.
I kind of have a two-part question to this. So you kind of named a few heroic moments, but I was wondering, what was the most kind of heroic moment you've been part of or witnessed on the battlefield? And then second part of it, has there ever been a time where you, one of your comrades or brothers, has ever kind of gone on the battlefield? And I guess this goes with all the military, gone on the battlefield and felt like, okay, I don't feel like this guy's going to put himself ahead of, or he is going to put himself ahead of the team. Has it ever been a problem, or is it no matter what, like, I trust every single guy next to me?
Well, I think that humans are humans, and being in chaotic situations will identify sometimes of some deficiencies or some weaknesses within an organization that you have to account for. And all you can control is what you have in front of you. So when I served in the Ranger Regiment, 3rd Ranger Battalion, and we were preparing for missions, we really trained as realistic and hard as we could. And through that training, we built a respect and trust for one another. And by training and committing to placing the mission first, it builds an intangible belief that you can accomplish what it is you need to, with the trust that your fellow soldiers, Rangers in this case, are going to execute the standard. When you're in a situation where that may not be the case, all you can do is go back to what I talk about over and over, and that's effort and attitude, and really try to mitigate any deficiencies for the greater good, risk management, if you will, and then continue the mission using those warrior ethos, those principles of warrior ethos. When I get to a better place, then in fact I can address those issues to prepare for the next mission with the greater good in mind. Now, I encountered an IED incident in Eastern Afghanistan where we were conducting post-blast site exploitation. So we were in the counter IED, counter improvised explosive device mission for CJTF Paladin. The mission there is to counter the most powerful form of killing on the battlefield, and that's the IED. And it targets innocents, it targets the coalition, it targets military formations moving throughout the battle space. And so these are placed roadside, They're detonated in a number of different ways, very innovative, very creative. They try to, guess and outcome our technology, and they were able to do so on many occasions. So one particular mission, when we were conducting a post-blast site exploitation, where we're going to a blast site that killed coalition soldiers the day before, we're going to collect evidence from that post-blast to bring back to analyze and collect evidence to match it with information to find who may have conducted this attack. And we do it on several levels: tactical, strategic, and operational level. Tactical level, we gather the evidence on the battlefield, we bring it to a lab, and we get fingerprints and biometrics data to match it to the source, and then we target that source. And we go after it all the way to the financiers and the organizers at the strategic level. So from the battlefield, who placed it, all the way up to the strategic leaders who placed that IED and who's responsible for it and who's financing it. So that's the counter ID fight. On one particular mission, we were going out, and it was a high priority mission to collect that data, and we were targeted, of course, and it's called a complex attack. So they attacked with an IED that blew up a number of vehicles in our formation. Because the explosive was, it disabled the vehicles, we had to dismount, and we located the target, the attacker's position, and we moved through the villages where there were no kids or females, and we rounded up the military-aged males, the suspects, if you will, and we brought in and collected information from them, ultimately identifying 3 perpetrators that we were able to detain and prosecute through UCMJ and military channels according to rules of engagement. So a very sophisticated operation that depended on my teammates and myself to be able to react and to continue the mission, collect the information, and identify the perpetrators during an unforecasted attack. And so we were able to accomplish that. And that's really a matter of trust, training, and shared purpose and willingness to put your personal safety aside for the greater good. And that's a daily life of many soldiers right now as we speak. And I left 2 lieutenants out that I must mention, and that's the First Lieutenant John Brostrom, who was a UH grad that was serving in Eastern Afghanistan in 2008 when his position was overrun, and he performed heroically, was later awarded the Silver Star, but more importantly, he was fighting for his team, his soldiers, to the last breath. And he's another fallen warrior that inspires this message from my classroom, Fundamentals of Leadership, who can draw from lessons learned, as well as Jeremy Wolf, another cadet that I had that was commissioned through the program and was lost in Iraq in 2003 during an active insurgency. So really it's shared purpose and applying the warrior ethos, controlling what you can control, leadership by example, and holding people accountable.
I think from a volleyball standpoint, I think when you go out onto the court or the battlefield or whatnot, there's got to be trust. And there's times where, you see guys step up in big moments. Again, like you said, on and off the court, and it shows, okay, this is a guy. And through those moments, you got to build it. And this is a guy that I trust.
The greatest form of
forever.
leadership is action.
Exactly.
Like you're saying. And it's listening to you talk in these stories, it's so it's crazy because you when you talk to a athlete or something, it's like you want them to perform such a simple skill, and the people who complain or they can't understand this or that, it's like the stuff that you guys are having to comprehend and the actions that you're having to take, and the team skills that you guys have to use on a scale compared to what athletes and what we have to do is not even close. So any athlete that ever complains about not being able to do whatever, some skill, I'm going to show them this and be like, what we have to do is not even on the same level.
Minute.
Most,
So-
I mean, it's absolutely.
But I think what's important about that, and that's a great point, I think what's important is that everyone can be a leader, and regardless of your path, regardless if it's military or something else, as a student athlete or anybody else, you have a calling, you have a purpose, and if you take the opportunity to apply personal leadership, you can affect those around you, whether it be your family, your team, any organization you're part of, and really impact on society. And I think this is a moment right now in an opportunity for us in this nation, in this country, this world right now, because of the issues that we're dealing with. I think we have a huge opportunity to take a step forward by listening and learning, and then communicating, and then taking action based on a level of trust that was developed through that process. Because trust is, as you mentioned, Gage, is essential for society, for an organization to function. And right now, with the chaos that's going on, number one, what happened to George Floyd's family, to happen to him and affected his family is inexcusable. But again, I go back to, I think we've come to a point where this gives us the opportunity to engage, to listen, learn, and take personal responsibility to enact a leadership qualities that we know are important on a personal level. When we point fingers, there's three pointing back at us. However, we can take personal responsibility by listening, learning, and taking an action plan on the things you can control through effort and attitude. And using fundamentals of leadership and applying the warrior ethos and applying the Army values of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, integrity, honor, and personal courage are things that we can control. And I think if we do that, person by person, will affect those around us, and we'll move to a better place because of it. This is a chance to grow for our nation.
Absolutely. And is there, I know you're still connected in, for sure, in the military community. So in the current country's leadership and administration, what is the general consensus from the military community of how this country's leadership is kind of like handling this current situation?
Well, I think it goes back to, the warrior ethos, and I always place the mission first. So we can't control many things, but we can control what we do. And we have a mission and we have a responsibility. And if we do our best to execute that mission and display personal leadership to the best of our ability, I think that, we'll work our way out of it. There's always going to be converging and conflicting themes and leadership in our nation. That's part of our history. It's part of the way we were formed. However, while we can't control all of those components, we can go back to becoming the best version of ourselves that we can. And that's controlling what we can control, effort and attitude, and applying these fundamentals of leadership to affect those around us. Leadership is a verb. I agree with you. You brought it up before. Leadership is a verb. It is action. It is what makes things work or not, or work very effectively or work poorly or fail. And so because leadership is so important, and that's why I'm so passionate about teaching it, because it's a very unutilized discipline in academia. If we apply these fundamentals of leadership in our personal lives, we can see an impact on those around us. And if we do that collectively, we can make a change.
And so we talk about change and with the sports coming back, it's a prominent moment in U.S. history right now. And I want to kind of get into ask you about kneeling in the national anthem. Now, it was stated this is not against our military troops and against the flag. It's against racial injustice. So as a man from the military, I was wondering your take on kneeling during the national anthem.
Well, I think that, again, we need to listen to what's going on and listen to the messages that are being put out. And it's a great chance for us to learn the real meaning behind the cry. And I think it's a chance to listen and learn and communicate to build trust that we hear you, we understand, but also balance that with allowing everyone to make personal choices and using their own discretion and their own thought process to and respect that. So what happened with George Floyd is inexcusable. I think it's opportunity to listen to the message, communicate, establish some trust, and from that, I think we can accommodate people's concerns and their position. And that's important in our country and part of our Constitution.
Right. And at the end of the day, this ties directly into leadership. Nothing's going to get accomplished if both sides, like you said, are just talking. Nobody's listening. It's just like this side, there's nothing that's going to ever come about if both sides on whatever. This is just in general, and from leadership, whether you're dealing with a teammate or whether you're dealing with politics or whatever, it's like you need to be able to sit there and listen and have a conversation and understand where they're coming from. That's such an undervalued component of being a leader, I feel like, and that ultimately it can destroy a unit, a team, a country, a government, and it'll also be the reason why that separates them and puts them above the rest. So absolutely, I think those are very good points.
Right. So Joe kind of just took the words out of my mouth here. So we kind of mentioned before, you are a member of the National Guard. We haven't been in Hawaii in a while. How is this kind of the situation in Hawaii when it comes to kind of what's kind of going on in the U.S. right now?
Well, first of all, I'm retired from the military, 27 years, but I'm retired. I'm a retired military Army officer, active duty dad. And, right now I'm a citizen, and I'm doing my best to give back through developing young leaders through opportunities they have in the community, whether it be in the classroom, teaching to collegiately to UH and students there, or it be, working through youth sports to instill character and leadership qualities that will carry them into the future. And so I focus on the things I can control and let go of the things I cannot, because my energy is limited. And if I give it to things I cannot control, then I'm not doing the things I can control. And so I focus on that. As far as the climate within Hawaii and the military situation, I think, they're well prepared. I think they're postured to do what they need to. I think there's a good balance between civilian leadership and the military's preparedness to execute missions. I don't see a major problem or any issues going on locally. But again, I think what's most important is this is an opportunity to do some self-reflection, look in the mirror and asking ourselves, what are we doing to become the best version of ourselves, to make a difference on those around us by applying, and holding ourselves accountable for qualities that make a difference for the greater good. It goes back to the greater good. And if we want to simplify the word ethos by putting the first stanza as I always place the mission first, I always place the greater good first. And that's being a citizen of the world. That's being a citizen of the United States. That's being a teammate. That's being a family member. All of those things matter. And these principles that I talk about and teach are focused on the individual. And if you apply them, they have a positive effect on those around you. And if we go back to that and hold each person accountable and challenge each person to become the best version of themselves, I think collectively we can work through this. We have overcome so much in our history. And I am confident that if we have shared purpose and place the greater good as teammates, as fellow countrymen, as citizens, I think we can overcome it. If we have intermediate objectives that are not part of the greater good, that's when we have a challenge. And I think we all have to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, are we really trying to make a difference for the greater good? Or are we settling for an intermediate objective that is more aligned with my personal agenda? So that's the question. And we have to have an honest conversation about that. And this is the time and place to have it. And so leadership has never been more important, personal leadership. And I think this is the time to do it. And I think we will move through this if, in fact, we take advantage of this huge opportunity that we have in front of us.
So before we kind of let you kind of get off, or let you go, I guess, in a way, we kind of want to end on a little fun note here. So I'm a big fan of movies, and this is coming from a movie buff standpoint. What is the most realistic military movie you've seen, and then the least realistic, or you could say scene that you've seen where it's like that's not true at all, or yeah.
You know, that's a good question, interesting question. I had the opportunity to view Saving Private Ryan with Medal of Honor recipient that participated in D-Day. And so when the movie was released, I had the opportunity to sit with this hero, a World War II veteran, D-Day participant, Medal of Honor recipient, and view the movie. And I was interested in his perception, and he said it captured the essence of what went on that day, and thought it characterized the patriotism, the heroism, and the courage of those soldiers that were trying to free France from occupation by the Nazis. And I think it did it justice based on his perception. And from that, I give that movie credit for capturing what was the essence of what happened that day. I will also talk about the movie Black Hawk Down. The movie Black Hawk Down captured a real-world operation that took place in Mogadishu, Somalia, in 1993, in October. That was a unit that I was formally assigned to, and knew many members that participated in that particular battle. And the Battle of Mogadishu, we lost 18 members from Task Force Ranger, 3rd Ranger Battalion, Bravo Company, my old unit, many members there, along with some members from Delta Force and other personnel assigned to Task Force Ranger. And that mission in itself was captured in Black Hawk Down, and through correspondence and communication with my former teammates and Rangers, many of them thought that movie, captured what was important that day, and that was to show the commitment to one another, the sacrifice, the courage, and humanity, and overcoming an adverse situation to fight for one another, which was really what it was all about. And so those two movies stand out to me as the most accurate in capturing what's most important, and that's fighting for one another.
How accurate when you see in movies when they try to depict, whether it's with the SEALs and it's with buds or Marines and the training, how accurate are those training scenes in those movies usually?
I don't have too much opinion on that. I mean, I experienced my own training, through the Army and Ranger School and Airborne School and Jump Master, Air Assault, also being assigned to tactical units like 3rd Ranger Battalion, 2nd Infantry Division, 25th Infantry Division, and other units. And so I can only, as far as what's portrayed, say it varies. It varies greatly to create effect on the audience, and it depends on the producers and whoever puts that together on how exaggerated or how accurate they want to make it. So I use documentaries in my class to illustrate, realistic training and what goes on. And so it's a mixed bag as far as what you're getting out there in the media.
Wait, one last question here, and then we'll let you off. What was the hardest thing you had to do in your training throughout your entire career and all your training?
I mean, I think the most enjoyable but the most taxing mission set that I had was in the Ranger Regiment. It's a very demanding organization in terms of mission set, that you have to be prepared and trained to a high level to perform that, pretty much at any time and worldwide. And that type of demand and that type of training and that type of readiness takes a commitment. And to be part of that and to go through the demanding types of training creates a confidence that in yourself and those around you, that you can accomplish, extraordinary things if, mission to do so. And so, I had many challenges in that type of training, but it made me stronger. It made me better. And as they used to say, you'll pass out before you die in the training. And so I attribute a lot of my perspective off of that type of training and the confidence I gained from that process.
I know we said one. That was our last question. I just one more kind of funny question. So you see a lot of these. Films. So like I said, this is the closest that a lot of us are going to get to combat and seeing what kind of goes on there, the news and the movies. So I think it's very accurate that, again, the news and the movies portray them really, really well. So again, when it comes down to Saving Private Ryan and Black Hawk Down, those are very important movies. One more quick question. So you see a lot of the whether it's Jarhead or you see a lot of other great military movies where it's the drill sergeant is known to kind of like yell and
Full Metal Jacket.
Exactly, and make insults. What's the funniest insult or the funniest thing you ever heard a drill sergeant say to kind of?
If anything comes to mind.
Yeah, if anything comes to mind.
Oh, I've been humbled a number of times. Think of one particular incident, but there's been many a time that I have been humbled, especially during my introduction to some of the training I went. And there are many times when you look back and you just amazed at how ridiculous you might have been at that moment, but have come through it and survived it, and really kind of have to laugh at yourself at times to keep it real and to keep you in a position where you're not beating yourself up. But growth and overcoming challenges and ability to laugh at yourself when someone points out something that you're deficient in is a skill set, and we call it thick skin. And having thick skin and being able to take constructive criticism a lot of times in a very embarrassing way on occasion has a point, and it makes you align your emotions with what's important and filter through what's not. And there's a reason why some of that happens. And so, yeah, my instructors and ranger instructors and others during the course of my training really had a good time with me at times. And so I remember one ranger instructor in the jungle phase of ranger school when we were moving through streams that required ropes, and they're heavy and they're wet, and you're moving through to build rope bridges to cross streams and other things in a jungle environment where the cypress roots are very entangled and you're in knee-deep mud and you have to secure the rope. And I was the rope man. And so the rope was extremely heavy because it was soaked in water. It was 3 a.m. and we'd been moving for, 18 hours or so. And so my responsibility was get the rope, secure the rope bridge, and establish, the crossing point. And I just remember him when I was fumbling the rope and everybody was waiting for me to secure the rope bridge site. I just felt extremely embarrassed because I was fumbling the rope and really struggled at that point in time, and the whole unit was watching me, and it just made me realize, hey, there's going to be times when you have to push through and do the best you can and learn from it, and next time maybe be better prepared. And so that carried over with me and back to the unit, and everything that I did from jump master school and preparing jumpers to jump from an airplane to inspecting them, to making sure their parachute was safe and secured, and when they went out the door that their parachute would function properly, to handling a weapon in extreme situations where you have left and right friendlies on left and right side of you, and the ability to to manage your weapon, as well as control fire support. The ability in my job was to control fire support, to control attack helicopters, gunships, and support the maneuver element trying to accomplish our mission. And we might be inserted by air or boat, and the ability to synchronize air support in support of that maneuver element that's engaging the enemy is something that only comes about through demanding training, realistic training, and there are going to be times during that process when you're not going to be at your best. And those leaders pointed that out to make me better, make my teammates better, and because of that, we're ready to perform. So being humble and ability to take constructive criticism, learn from it, move through it, make yourself better, is part of being a leader.
Right. Colonel, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your service as well. On behalf of Ada System here, we would like to thank you for joining us, for your service. And if there were more Trey Johnsons in the world, it would be a lot better place.
A simpler place.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say two things. I want to just recognize my fellow brothers and sisters in the military that came before us, that are serving during the time I was there, and that are out there right now protecting our way of life and our security, providing security, as well as those who will serve in the future. I also want to thank you guys for representing Hawaii as student athletes in the most exemplary way. I'm extremely proud of all of you. We watch you, we follow you, and the way you represent yourselves on the floor has an impact on those who watch you. And so you have a positive impact on the state, the way you perform, the way you stay together. I know Coach Charlie Wade, is leading the way for you guys, but you guys are certainly responding and very inspirational the way you play the game. And we want to thank you for that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining us today on Ada System, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I
had to rep
appreciate
the
you.
shirt. I had to rep the shirt.
I noticed it. I still have the picture of the Warrior Ethos that you sent me from USC. So
Hey, that's it.
there you
That's
go.
that's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Same to
Take
you.
care.
Thanks again.
It's always an honor having anyone of military service on our show. First, hopefully, of many. And we like to kind of offer a lot of different perspectives. So we had, like I said, we have a lot of perspectives, and he had a lot to say. I know that it might not have been volleyball related, but still just in life. And you can put it back to, as he did, to volleyball. And just all around, just an all-around stand-up guy and a leader in the true sense of the word.
For sure, yeah. And me and Joe took that class like at separate times. We both for sure got the same thing out of it. Like when we talk about our experience in that class and just everything that he had to say about, just being a leader. And it applies to other classes too. Like just the way you handle yourself. You learn a lot about just human relations, how you treat people and stuff. And it has so much of an impact on your life. And that was a great class that we took. I think Joe would agree with me on that.
Absolutely. And disagree with Gage a little bit. I think 100% that has something to do with volleyball.
Sure.
I think everything he just said has something to do with volleyball. Has anything in life, any sport has something to do with the essence of what he's talking about and how to lead. I mean, like Max said, we learned so much. And what he was talking about and being able to lower your activation level in the time of stress, I think is super important. And I think what I've always told people, I told athletes, told teammates, was in the hardest times, you just got to simplify things. And that's exactly what he said. He's like, in the toughest moment, you just got to think about, all right, what is the point of the mission? What are the bare basics? What are we doing this for? And I just need to simplify everything in the moments that he's enduring the most stress. And so for me, yeah, I think all of that ties into volleyball, and I learned so much. And like Max said, we took the class, and there wasn't one point, maybe a couple times he referred like an athletic field, but everything was tied around the military and real world stuff. But you could immediately think of a situation on the volleyball court, off the court, and interacting with your team
for sure.
that plays a factor. And so the stuff he was talking about, I think, is awesome. I hope you guys had a notepad to take. For me, I always was taking notes and just was super inspired by everything he had. He would bring in guest speakers that, like we were talking about at the beginning, his resume is it's crazy.
And
He spent He's been a part of some really special units.
You know what? I had that class right before practice when I took it. So I'd just be all riled up for that class. I was like, let's go, seize the day. I'm a leader. And just charge into practice. Man. That was awesome.
You're like the
I was ready
Kool-Aid.
for him to say, when we were talking about the movie stuff too, I was ready for him to say like least accurate movie scene. I was getting ready for him to go, it's got to be that baby in American Sniper. I'm disgusted by that scene. I was ready for him to say that.
Max, I expected you to be like the Kool-Aid man every time you ran into practice. Like every time you talk, just run through a big wall.
Let's go, baby.
Oh yeah.
No, it just got me focused, man. I love that.
Well, we've learned a lot today. I hope you guys have learned a lot today. This has been a very, very, very informative guest, and we hope to have, again, we want to kind of broaden our guests, not just volleyball players, but people who can contribute to our volleyball off and on the court, whether they are not or are volleyball players. So, and we're gonna get a sports nutritionist on. We gotta kind of
We gotta get the details. It's just we were just speaking on our own
Our bro
experiences.
science.
Yeah, bro science, exactly. We call it that.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you for joining us again. This has been another episode of Out of System.